Hello everyone, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate that you came for the last session of the day, which is always exciting, and it was a long day. We learned a lot, and I'm pretty sure we are all very exhausted by the end, but we still have some powers to power through some design concepts in Drupal. So I really appreciate you coming here and joining me for this exciting talk. It's a new talk that I'm giving only for the second time in my life, so hopefully it goes smoothly. If not, we will go through it together. All right, before I start, let me talk a little bit about myself. I am originally from Ukraine. My name is Anna, and I came to Canada about 6 years ago, and I have been speaking English only 6% of my life, so if you hear some problems, that is the reason why. I'm Drupal Solutions Lead at Digital Echidna. We are a full-service agency located in London, Ontario, and we are specializing on Drupal. We are doing Drupal 8 solutions mostly, but we also maintain some of our Drupal 7 websites. And we are always looking for new talent. So if you're interested to relocate from sunny Chicago to most sunny Canada, then please welcome. We will be happy to talk to you. All right. So today we will cover some opportunities of how to create componentized design and build componentized design in Drupal. And we will mostly focus on the site building part of it. The reason for that is we hear a lot of front-end talks about how we can use Spartan Labs, we can use other design systems to build componentized designs. We can pair it with React, but we rarely cover the site building part of it, but it's always a site building going into it to support integration of this design component into Drupal. So we will talk about what options you have, and there are quite a bit, and how to set up your component-based layout going just in core or some contrib modules as well. And we will talk about the new kit at the block, layout builder, that is very exciting, and we will touch base a little bit on that as well. But before we move forward, let me talk to you about who recently got questions from the clients or requests from the client to be able to alter design on the page how the client wants without being asked for developer to update the design and template. Yeah, a lot of you. And we have been getting more requests about, can our editors have a lot of power to just lay out this page how we want? Can we just figure out what components go on the page and how it will look without you? Can you give us more power? Can we write inline CSS? And we're like, no, you shouldn't be doing that. So we started introducing a component design concept to our clients. And the reason for that is it's kind of introducing to the clients the ability to think in terms of components and then think in terms of like a jigsaw puzzle, when you can build your, or like a Tetris, when you can build your pages with these Tetris blocks versus just doing absolutely random things with the design and layouts, or rely on a developer to update certain pages. So if you talk to your client and you decide that they absolutely on board with this component design idea, then you have to talk to them about some requirements and limitations. Unfortunately, we are still kind of in infancy in Drupal in terms of managing the layout systems, and that's why all of these implementations come with some challenges. And the base challenge is that not a lot of them are revisionable, or revisionable how you expect it to be. So even layout builder that is experimental in core has some problems with revisions. As well, you might run into some issues with revisions on multilingual sites if you're using paragraphs module, or even if you just using a core approach, just content types, and you're using just entity reference, not entity reference revisions, and this combination of inline entity form, you might run into issues. So you need to outline all of these issues to your client before you dive into one or another approach, to just kind of talk to them about their editorial workflow. And is revisions an important part of their workflow? Is it like a small editor team and they approve everything? everything before they actually put it on the website, or maybe they have a different revision process that is outside of CMS, and revisions in Drupal are not important. So talk about all of that. Talk about if your site is multilingual. So some contrib modules are not suited well for multilingual website. So for example, if you have English and Spanish, or like in Canada we have English and French, that might be a challenge. And then what type of a control do you need for your layouts? Is it okay to just lay out a node, or is it something more required, like the entire page layout, including header and the footer? So talk about how granular the control should be, how many options the client would like to have. Is it okay to have just like a drop down for colors? Let's say they can pick a color of certain component, or do they want to have it completely free for them to just have a normal color picker? So that would be just one example. So once you define your requirement, you need to define your components. That's kind of breaking the entire kind of observation and entire experience the client typically have on the site, and kind of pulling it apart. Because a lot of us are used to a web when we just go to the page and we consume the content as a whole, right? We see the navigation, but we rarely think like, oh, that menu looks really pretty, like, oh, that's a menu component. We don't think like that. We just have an experience as a page, because we are coming from the print when basically we were reading books, turning pages. So the same approach we took to the web. And the web at the beginning was just page-based, right? You create page template for one page, and it was static web. We had all hard-coded, and then we moved to dynamic web with PHP, and then PHP was in line, and that also was like set of templates that we were powering with PHP. Then we came to CMSs, but we still have this concept of a node, of a route, right? So that's breaking it even more, and educating your client and members of your team that now we have to think a little bit more granular. We have to break everything into smaller levels, just like as if we were building a 3D puzzle or something like that, or layering a cake. So we need to figure out these little molecules that build out your page. So once you have this talk, define what components needs to be done on your library, and actually create a style guide. And it can be multiple options. It can be a living style guide, it could be a PDF style guide, but the idea is define all possible components on the website. And it sounds a little bit intimidating, but that ensures that their process, when they actually start in building their pages as editors, they will know and understand what options are available for them. So would they like to have a slider? Would they like to have a video embed, maybe a map embed, maybe an accordion, potentially a grid, maybe CTA cards? So all of that needs to be laid out in the PDF, or right in Drupal, build it out as a big style guide page. And then talk about functionality. So every component might have additional functionality. So let's say you don't want to have a slider that always just slides, right? You might want to have a slider that has dots as a controls, or some of the pages might have a slider that have errors and it fades instead of sliding, right? So that's just a simple example of different component functionality, but it can go further. So let's say I have a CTA component, and I would like in one scenario it to be just a card with an image and a title, but then on another scenario I would like to have a description in and it linking out to external pages. So all of that can be incorporated as one component and then controlled by your editor. But that needs to be defined in your component library. So the example that I said is a slider, then an accordion. You see that even hours can be a component, and down there you see a CTA grid. So everything that can be repeatable or chunked out from your layouts of pages, everything can be built into the components. And the great part about it is that they can be reused throughout the website. So now every page and every node is not anymore a content piece, but rather a container for your components. Okay, so the functional example, if I expand a little bit more on the CTA, as you can see in top row, I see a grid of 3 CTAs, and then down there you see exactly the same CTAs and actually exactly the same content type, but it's actually built out to be a more expanded version of it, and the client can reuse the same version of the content in a different way throughout the website, but that's exactly the same component. It's just they have a control option on a backend to be able to choose how to display it. So let's start with building full page layouts in core. What would you do? There is a very simple concept that has been there forever. We just never used it, but it's there and it's been there since Drupal 7. So basically, we are using just content types that are helper content types, and we entity reference them in a certain view mode, and then we can override the templates for this view mode and control it with drop-downs. So the idea is that you will have a container content type, the one that will actually have an end-user display, and helper content types. These helper content types will never be viewed as single nodes. In fact, you will probably rabbit hole them. But you will define view modes for these helper content types. And by using entity reference, in inline entity reference form, you can create those and reference as many as you want, and just render them in that new view mode. And this is as simple as it is. You can build different pages dynamically using these helper content types. And you're not using any contrib modules. You're not actually even using a layout builder. All you do is reusing already existing helper components. So imagine this page structure. You can see that every single row on this quite complicated page is actually built as a component. So we have 3 content types in here. We have a slider, which is a separate helper content type slider. We have a layout container content type, which is basically just an empty template with 2 divs in it. One is 30% width and one is a 70% width. And then we have full width view mode for the same layout container, and all it has, it just has 1 div that spans full width. So basically the entire page is a big node that has 1 entity reference field that references all of this content that is actually rendered here. So it's quite a simple concept, and the point of it is instead of thinking of a node as kind of provider of a content, as a fieldable entity, you think of a container node as just basically parents that can reference multiple children in a different view modes. And in Drupal 8, it's very easy to define new view modes. You don't even have to have a hook for that. You just go and do it through UI. So on the back end, as I said, it looks very easy. So that DAX reference content is basically just an entity reference. And you see that all of these components are listed out as reference entities. And then down there in the dropdown, you see the dropdown of all content types that can be rendered as a component. And because inline entity form is working this way, you don't even have to go and create a separate node and then come back to your container. You can actually embed your forms right inside your content type. Right? So for the slider, you see that is a view mode. So we have a slider here with a big image. We have some description. We have external link. And we have controls. So that's basically how the slider content type component is looking. So you don't have to read through all of that, but the top portion of it is basically just a reference to separate slides. Each slide is a node which just contains an image. And then down here, those are just done with Drupal normal field UIs, and all of them are just lists that are like slider types. That's basically a view mode of your slider, and then background color is just a list of options, the same with the width and the same with autoplay options. So we are using in this example Slick Slider library, and we know what options this library will be providing. So on the back end, we are going to pre-process this node to get these variables from this field and pass it to the template and to the JavaScript library. So that's a little bit intimidating preprocess function, but all it's doing, as you can see, just reading from the field, getting the value and passing it to the variables array, so that it is accessible from your Twig template and from your JavaScript library. So you can see that we actually passing everything we just got out of these fields into the Drupal settings object that will be available for, from our library. And in our library, we will just initiate Slick slider with these options. So pretty easy concept in here. Right, so that's just out of core, nothing innovative, just everything we had for ages. Now it comes with bricks. So it would be awesome to have ability to nest things inside each other, to have some sort of hierarchy and to have some sort of a tree. So here come bricks. Bricks are fantastic. It's a great contrib module that we discovered quite recently. It's been there for quite a while, but wasn't that popular in the community. It is multilingual, and it's based on core entity API, which means that it's very easy to extend, and it's very easy to build upon. In fact, it utilizes entity creation kit, but you can also extend it on your own if you want to, or you can just use bricks. They integrate with paragraphs, so don't think they are mutually exclusive, because they're not. But we like to use bricks in pure. So in here you see that we have all of the bricks options, and if you don't know anything about bricks and you see it at the first time, you can notice that it's very similar to content types. And in fact, brick has nothing different than a content type. The only difference between a brick and a content type is that brick doesn't have a single display. So it doesn't have a node display. That means that you don't have to worry about rabbit hole in it, or having it removed from your XML sitemap or anything like that, or any bot to find it. So it's acting as if it was blocks. So if you were building something from blocks, and bricks is a very good analogy, and it also allows you to reuse this brick throughout the site. So the advantages between this and paragraphs, let's say, is that you can reuse bricks multiple times. So let's say you have a CTA brick that you would like to paste on multiple nodes, right? So you can reference that brick throughout the site multiple times, and when you update that brick once, it will be updated throughout the entire website. Okay, so on the content type node, when you actually embed the brick, they utilize this very cool library that allows you to create nesting trees, which is very nice when the client is trying to create a layout. You see in here we have a wrapper, so basically your containers, and you can put things inside that. Another awesome feature of bricks is that you see there is a drop down that says default. You can define view modes on bricks as if you were defining a view mode on your content type, and also through Drupal UI. So there is no code involved, and then you define this view modes, and you will say, let's say on this brick of CTA I would like a title on the top and an image on the bottom. On image left, I would like image on the left and then description on the right. And you can define everything through view modes. Because you do it through view modes, it's immediately registered by your theme system. So you don't even have to worry about that. You can just create a theme template in Twig, override it however you want, and you have completely two different representations of a brick. Then your editors can control this representation out of this default or a different, you can see B equal columns layout in here, or any other view mode you define and agree upon in your component library PDF. And then, because it's tree-like, you can actually nest one in another. So potentially you can have grid inside the grid inside the grid, or you can have different tabs inside accordions and things like that. And you don't have to worry about how to create these complicated templates, because those are entities. Drupal will nest them naturally. And additional advantage in here, if your client wants to be involved with the theme building, can participate with you, give them a partial and say you can put all your CSS classes in there. Then they can use this little CSS field and they can override anything they want and put it in a partial without completely interacting with a more complicated Drupal theme. And another cool thing about Bricks is that allows it to duplicate it. So imagine you create multiple FAQ accordions, and it's very difficult to just create one and then type content in and then create another. It's time consuming. It's very easy to just click duplicate. It will utilize the core duplication method, and it will just create a dupe of this entity, and all you need to do is update whatever needs to be updated, and it's already attached to your node. So it's very convenient, it's very fast to edit. So on the front end, this entire page is built with bricks. So you can see that the background image is actually that wrapper that had that image in. Then you have this gray area text, which is a CTA. We have a grid brick, and we have CTA layout. So two bottom rows are actually the same brick type. They're just utilizing different view modes. One is utilizing B image left view mode, and another one is utilizing the default where the image is at the top and the description is at the bottom. But that's the beauty of it, is that it is completely controllable by the editor. So your client doesn't have to come back and ask you to code something more. They can actually choose whatever works for their content. Right, so to recap it, the advantages of Bricks is it is fully translatable, it's reusable throughout the site, it has great nesting functionality, it doesn't have individual standalone displays. That means that you don't have to worry to rabbit hole it. It's great for the small content areas, but it can be used for full page layout, and it completely complies to the in-core layout discovery API, so you can build your own layouts out of it, and it basically just utilizes what core provides, which is awesome. Now, let's talk about the new kid on the block, layout builder. So they brought in the layout builder, and it's absolutely fantastic. It brings in what we were lacking for so long, the ability to just drag and drop things around and that's create a layout. And it's fantastic for the clients that are more visual, so they like to be able to just see what they're placing on the page and then how it will be looking. The disadvantage of it, it's still experimental, so it has some hiccups with multilingual implementation and with revisions. It just, if you have a single language website and revisions are not at stake, then go ahead and use it, because editors can select layouts per node, and it's very granular. They can add additional columns, they can add additional rows, they can drop anything they want, and it's very extendable because it's core, so it provides you with the ability to override certain options. There are a bunch of contrib modules already developed on top of it to be able to limit the amount of blocks showing in the layout builder so that editors are not overwhelmed with options. And then you can do anything you want, and you already visualize it. So basically, your themer already pre-styles the majority of these blocks or the majority of these components, and editors can see exactly how it will look. So it's like vis-a-vis on steroids, and it's really great. But the problem with it is that with great power comes great responsibility. So out of the box, it looks similar to this. You can see that I dragged the test event, and it's already pre-styled by our themer, and he made it already like having like and comment form in there, styled, linked to the view full post. Now, if I start dragging and dropping it to any other column, then it will already use our CSS of the theme to adapt and adjust, and then people will be able to see the result of their actions versus guessing it from the backend form. So, as I said, with great power comes great responsibility. It means that we are now doubling or tripling time of the theming, because we have to predict every single combination that the user might generate with the content. And more often than not, the clients will come back to you and say something doesn't look great, even though that doesn't look great because the content doesn't work and the layout options they selected. But we have to account for that. But challenge accepted with CSS3 and CSS grid and with Flexbox, it's very easy to kind of predict and make very good flexible layouts without having to rely on floats or absolute positioning and fixed positioning, anything like that. The other problem with Layout Builder is there is no apparent nesting. What I'm saying apparent is that potentially you could create a layout of another node that incorporates another 20 components and then put it in that main layout builder, but it's not evident how it will behave. So you can't really nest as much as you need with bricks. So yeah, so there is no nesting. And it also requires more robust editor skills. It almost requires an editor to be some sort of a designer, so they understand how their content should look good, or it has some sort of an artistic taste, because even if they think it is looking good, they need to know design principles in order to actually not ruin website after a second day of launch. So that kind of relies on them as well to be a little bit more experienced users than just entering content into the fields of a CMS. Right, so that was it. I know it was a little bit fast, but that means that we have some time for the Q&A. Any questions? Yeah.
When is Layout Builder not going to be experimental anymore?
That's a.
And is Bricks going to be like more popular? Going to get more popular in the community?
So the question was when the Layout Builder is not going to be experimental. I heard the rumors that 8.6. Well, no, 8.7. Yes, 8.7 is going to be good. Fingers crossed. The Layout Initiative is doing fantastic job, but we don't really know for sure yet. In terms of Bricks being more popular, I don't know. I am not in contact with Bricks maintainer, but they're solid, they're stable. So I think it's not Bricks. Mostly it's that entity creation kit module. ECK is lacking some traction. But if that's getting to be stable, then Bricks will definitely get a little bit more love and attention. Because right now ECK is in alpha and a lot of people are afraid to use it. But we use it. Nothing blew up yet. It's yet is a keyword. Any other questions?
Yeah. And I can also add a comment on the Layout Builder stability thing. As I understand, there's like some accessibility issues that are like gating the stability of it, but they are still trying for 8.7. The question that I had was, given those different options, like what I know it may not always be your choice, but what your preference might be between them.
We kind of like, we try not to have a preference, we're just trying to figure out what meets the client's business needs, kind of, you know?
Reasonable answer.
So if they have to have revisions, then we definitely go with just content types options, because like, no, we have to have every single thing revisionable. That is the only reliable thing we can provide, right? But if they say, no, we don't want revisions, but we want a lot of nesting, and it's Bricks. And then if they, oh, we don't really get how that backend form translates into the front end, then we go with Layout Builder and allow them to experiment. A lot of the time, what worked for us was also demo them on vanilla Drupal site early and tell them, play with it. Here's your keys, this is our test site, it doesn't go anywhere, do whatever you want and feel what is more comfortable for you. And then we build the content types on top of whatever approach works for them.
Makes sense.
Any other questions? No? Then I would appreciate if you leave a feedback on my MidCamp note. And thank you so much for coming, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.